The chandelier flickered, casting jagged shadows across the dining table as Mom's laughter died in her throat. Dad's fingers stabbed the air, aimed at me, his voice a blade slicing through the birthday cheer. This guest doesn't belong in the family. The room froze, forks clattered, wine glasses trembled, and my heart plummeted into a void I'd spent years pretending didn't exist. I was 25, the daughter who'd always felt like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong picture. Mom's 48th birthday was supposed to be a celebration, a rare night where our fractured family played at being whole. The dining room smelled of rosemary and roasted lamb, Mom's favorite, and the table was a mosaic of her best china. Each played a silent plea for normalcy. My younger brother, Ethan, 19 and perpetually distracted, scrolled his phone under the table. My older sister, Claire, 30, sat stiffly beside her husband, Mark, her eyes darting between Dad and me like she was bracing for a storm. And then there was me, Lily, the middle child who'd never quite fit, now pinned under Dad's accusation like a butterfly under glass. Why would you say that? Mom's voice cracked, her hands gripping the edge of the table. She looked at Dad, her husband of 28 years, as if he were a stranger. Her auburn hair, streaked with gray, framed a face that had aged too fast, worn by years of keeping our family's secrets buried. Dad's jaw tightened, his graying beard bristling. "She knows why," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "Tell them, Lily. Tell them what you've been hiding." The air thickened, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floral wallpaper behind me. But there was no escaping this. Not anymore. My secret, the one I'd guarded like a wound, was about to bleed out in front of everyone I loved. It started 6 months ago, in a moment of weakness I couldn't undo. I'd been working late at the bookstore, shelving novels about lives braver than mine, when I met him, James, a customer with kind eyes and a laugh that felt like sunlight. He was 35, married, and a father, but he listened to me in a way no one in my family ever had. Our conversations over coffee turned into stolen moments, then into something I swore I'd never let happen. I wasn't that person, the one who breaks vows, who betrays trust. But I did, and when I ended it, guilt gnawing at my bones, I thought I could bury it. I was wrong. "Lily," Claire's voice was sharp, her lawyer's instinct kicking in. "What's he talking about?" I opened my mouth, but the words stuck like thorns. How do you confess to a room full of people who've already judged you? How do you explain a mistake that's now a weapon in your father's hands? Dad had found out. How? I still didn't know, and now he was wielding it like a sledgehammer. "Enough," Mom said, standing abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is my birthday. Can we not do this now?" But Dad wasn't done. "No, Susan. She doesn't get to sit here, eating our food, pretending she's one of us, when she's been sneaking around with a married man." The gasp from Ethan was the only sound in the room. Claire's face paled, and Mark's hand tightened around his fork. Mom sank back into her chair, her eyes searching mine for a denial I couldn't give. "It's not what you think," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "It was a mistake. It's over." "Over?" Dad scoffed. "You think that erases it? You think you can just waltz back into this family after what you've done?" The words hit harder than I expected, each one a reminder of the years I'd spent trying to earn his approval. I'd been the quiet kid, the one who got good grades, who never caused trouble, who thought if she was good enough, Dad might finally see her. But he never did. And now, this one mistake had given him the ammunition he'd always wanted to push me out. "Tom, stop," Mom said, her voice trembling but firm. "She's our daughter." "Is she?" Dad's eyes were cold, unyielding. "Because I don't recognize her anymore." I stood, my legs shaking, and grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. "I'll go," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to ruin your birthday." "Lily, wait." Mom reached for me, but I was already moving toward the door, the weight of their stares burning into my back. As I stepped into the cool night air, the sound of Mom's choked sob followed me, sharper than any knife. Outside, the street was quiet, the glow of streetlights pooling on the pavement. I walked, not knowing where I was going, my breath hitching as I replayed Dad's words. This guest doesn't belong in the family. I'd always felt like an outsider, but hearing it out loud was different. It was final. And yet, as the guilt and shame churned in my gut, a small, defiant spark flickered to life. I wasn't the only one with secrets. Dad's anger, his need to humiliate me in front of everyone. It wasn't just about me. There was something else, something he wasn't saying. I stopped under a street lamp, my hands trembling as I pulled out my phone. I needed answers, and I knew where to start. James's wife, Emily. If Dad knew about my affair, she might too. And if she did, I owed her more than silence. I owed her the truth. The city buzzed around me, but all I could hear was the echo of Dad's voice, branding me an outcast. I stood under the street lamp, my phone heavy in my hand, Emily's number glowing on the screen. Dialing it felt like stepping off a cliff, but I couldn't run from this anymore. Hello. Emily's voice was soft, cautious, like she'd been expecting a call she dreaded. She was 34, a schoolteacher with a warmth I'd envied when I first learned about her. Now, I pictured her in their modest suburban home, maybe tucking her kids into bed, unaware of the bomb I was about to drop. Emily, it's Lily, I said, my voice shaking. We need to talk. About James. A pause stretched, so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, I know. My stomach twisted. You know? I found texts on his phone 2 months ago, she said, her voice steady but laced with pain. He told me it was over, that he'd ended it. But I didn't know it was you. Not until your father called me this morning. My knees buckled, and I leaned against the lamppost. My father? He called you. He said he'd seen you with James at a cafe. He tracked me down through James's office. He was angry. Said you didn't deserve to be part of his family anymore. The betrayal stung deeper than I'd thought possible. Dad hadn't just exposed me at dinner. He'd gone out of his way to ruin me, to make sure my shame was public. But why? Why go to Emily? Why make this about her too? I'm so sorry, I said, tears spilling down my cheeks. I didn't mean for this to happen. I ended it as soon as I realized how wrong it was. Emily's sigh was heavy, burdened by months of carrying her own secret. I believe you, but it doesn't change what happened. My kids, they don't know, and I'm trying to keep it that way. But your father, he wants to destroy us both. Us. I frowned, confused. What do you mean? He told me he's going to tell my parents, my friends, everyone at my school. He said he's protecting his family, but it feels like he's punishing me for James's mistake. For your mistake. The spark of defiance I'd felt earlier flared brighter. Dad's crusade wasn't just about me. It was about control, about wielding his moral high ground like a weapon. But I knew Dad. His righteousness had cracks, secrets he'd buried deeper than mine. I'd seen the late-night phone calls he brushed off, the way he'd disappear for hours with vague excuses. If he wanted to play this game, I wasn't going down alone. Emily, can we meet? I asked. I need to understand what's happening, and maybe we can figure this out together. She hesitated, then agreed. We set a time to meet the next morning at a quiet cafe across town. As I hung up, I felt a strange mix of fear and resolve. I'd made a mess, but I wasn't the only one. And if Dad thought he could erase me from the family, he was about to learn I wasn't that easy to break. The next morning, the cafe smelled of fresh coffee and cinnamon, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. Emily sat across from me, her brown hair pulled back, her eyes tired but sharp. She was prettier than I'd imagined, with a quiet strength that made my guilt sharper. We ordered coffee, but neither of us drank. Tell me everything, she said, her voice low. I need to know how this happened. So I did. I told her about the bookstore, about James's easy smile, about how I'd been drowning in my family's expectations and he'd felt like a lifeline. I told her how I'd ended it, how I'd hated myself every day since. She listened, her face unreadable, until I finished. Your father's not wrong to be angry, she said finally. But he's not innocent either. When he called, he said things about protecting his family's honor. It felt rehearsed, like he was hiding something. I nodded, my mind racing. He's always been like that, quick to judge, slow to forgive. But this feels personal, like he's using my mistake to cover something else. Emily leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Then we find out what. If he's going to come after me, after my kids, I want to know why. I want to know who he really is. We spent the next hour piecing together what we knew. Dad had always been the patriarch, the one who set the rules and expected obedience. But there were gaps in his story, business trips that didn't add up, a locked drawer in his office I'd never dared touch. Emily mentioned a mutual acquaintance who'd seen Dad at a bar with a woman who wasn't Mom, months before my affair with James began. It wasn't proof, but it was a thread to pull. By the time we parted, we had a plan. Emily would talk to her acquaintance, dig for details. I'd go back home, face the fallout, and search for evidence of Dad's secrets. If he wanted to play dirty, we'd play dirtier. The house was quiet when I returned, the birthday decorations still hanging like ghosts of a celebration that never was. Mom was in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes with a ferocity that told me she was avoiding her feelings. She didn't look up as I entered, but her shoulders stiffened. "Lily," she said, her voice raw. "Why didn't you tell me?" I sat at the counter, the same counter where I'd helped her bake cookies as a kid, back when I thought I could make her proud. I was ashamed, I admitted. I thought I could fix it by ending it. I didn't want to hurt you. She turned, her eyes red-rimmed. "You didn't just hurt me. You hurt all of us. But your father, what he did last night, that wasn't right. He shouldn't have ambushed you like that." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Mom, how did he find out? About James?" She hesitated, her hands pausing in the soapy water. "He didn't say. Just came home yesterday, furious, saying he'd seen you with someone. He wouldn't tell me more." Her words confirmed what Emily had told me. Dad had seen me with James, but he'd gone straight to Emily instead of confronting me. Why? The question gnawed at me as I climbed the stairs to Dad's office. The door was locked, as always, but I'd learned his tricks as a teenager. A bobby pin and a little patience, and the lock clicked open. The office was a shrine to Dad's ego, awards from his accounting firm, photos of him shaking hands with clients, a life built on appearances. I started with the locked drawer in his desk, my heart pounding as I jimmied it open. Inside were bank statements, receipts, and a small black notebook. My hands shook as I flipped through it. Names, dates, places, none of them familiar, but the entries were meticulous, almost obsessive. One caught my eye. October 12th, 2024. Dinner with R, Marriott Hotel. 8 p.m. R, not Mom's initial. Not a client's, as far as I knew. I snapped a photo with my phone and kept searching, my pulse racing. At the bottom of the drawer was a burner phone, cheap and unassuming. I turned it on, my breath catching as a single text thread loaded. Messages to R, cryptic but intimate. "Miss you. Can't wait to see you again." My stomach churned. Dad was hiding something, and it wasn't just a grudge against me. I pocketed the notebook and phone, locking the drawer behind me. Downstairs, Mom was still at the sink, her back to me. "Mom," I said softly, "we need to talk about Dad." She turned, her face a mask of exhaustion. "What now, Lily?" I hesitated, then decided to hold back the evidence for now. "He's not telling us everything. I think he's keeping secrets too." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. "He's been distant for months," she admitted. I thought it was work stress, but after last night, I don't know. I reached for her hand, surprised when she didn't pull away. "We'll figure it out," I promised. Together. That afternoon, I met Emily again, this time at a park where her kids played in the distance. She looked more determined, her jaw set. "My friend confirmed it," she said. "Your dad was at that bar with a woman named Rachel. She's a client of his, but they were close. Too close." Rachel. R. The pieces were falling into place, but they didn't make the picture any clearer. Was Dad's anger at me a way to deflect from his own guilt? Or was he just a hypocrite, punishing me for a sin he was guilty of himself? "We need proof," I said. "Something solid. If he's going to tear our lives apart, we're not going down without a fight." Emily nodded, her eyes fierce. "I'm in. For my kids. For me." We spent the rest of the day planning. Emily would track down Rachel, see if she'd talk. I'd keep digging at home, looking for anything that could expose Dad's double life. The stakes were higher now, not just my place in the family, but Mom's trust, Emily's future, and the truth we'd all been too afraid to face. The burner phone buzzed in my pocket as I sat in my childhood bedroom, the walls still plastered with posters from a life that felt like someone else's. The text was from Emily. Rachel agreed to meet. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Coffee shop on Elm." My heart raced. This was it, the chance to unravel Dad's secrets. But the weight of what I was doing pressed down on me. Betraying Dad to expose him felt like trading one sin for another. I spent the night poring over the notebook, cross-referencing dates with Dad's calendar. The entries were coded, but patterns emerged. Meetings with R always coincided with his late nights at the office. I felt sick, not just at the betrayal, but at the realization that Dad had been living a double life while preaching family values. The hypocrisy burned, but so did the fear of what this would do to Mom. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop early, my nerves frayed. Emily was already there, her face pale but resolute. Rachel walked in minutes later, a woman in her late 30s with sharp features and an air of confidence that made me feel small. She sat down, her eyes flicking between us like she was sizing up a threat. "You're Lily," she said, her voice cool. "And you're Emily. I'm guessing this isn't a social call." "We know about you and my dad," I said, cutting to the chase. "We need to know the truth." Rachel's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Your dad's a complicated man. What do you want to know?" "Everything," Emily said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "He's threatening my family, using Lily's mistake to ruin us. If he's hiding something, we deserve to know." Rachel leaned back, her eyes narrowing. "Tom's been my accountant for 3 years. Last year, things changed. He was charming, attentive, said his marriage was falling apart. I believed him. My chest tightened. Was it true? About his marriage?" She shrugged. "He said your mom was distant, that they hadn't been happy in years. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know." Emily's voice was sharp. "So you just went along with it, knowing he was married?" Rachel's gaze didn't waver. "I'm not proud of it, but I'm not the one who made vows to your mom. Or to you," she added, glancing at Emily. "If you're looking for someone to blame, start with Tom." She was right, but it didn't make the truth easier to swallow. Rachel gave us details, dates, hotels, even a weekend trip Dad had passed off as a conference. Each word was a nail in the coffin of the man I'd once idolized. But there was no time to grieve. We needed evidence, something Mom couldn't ignore. "Do you have anything concrete?" I asked. "Emails, texts, anything we can use?" Rachel hesitated, then pulled out her phone. "I have messages. I kept them in case things got messy. I'll send you screenshots." As she forwarded the texts, my phone pinged with evidence of Dad's affair. Words that mirrored the ones I'd sent James, full of longing and lies. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd fallen for a married man, and now I was uncovering my father's infidelity. We were more alike than I wanted to admit. Back home, I showed Mom the texts. Her face crumpled, the weight of 28 years of marriage collapsing under the truth. "How could he?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "How could he do this to us?" "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I didn't want to hurt you, but he's been lying to all of us." She nodded, her hands trembling as she clutched the phone. "I need time," she said. "But we're not done. He doesn't get to destroy this family and walk away." That night, Mom called a family meeting, minus Dad. Claire and Ethan sat in the living room, their faces a mix of confusion and dread. I laid out everything: my affair, Dad's hypocrisy, the evidence we'd gathered. Claire's lawyer instincts kicked in, her questions sharp and precise. Ethan, usually detached, looked betrayed, his fists clenched. "We confront him," Claire said finally. "All of us. Together." Mom nodded, her resolve hardening. "Tomorrow, when he gets home." As I lay in bed that night, the weight of what was coming pressed down on me. Tomorrow, we'd face Dad, not as a fractured family, but as a united front. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. The living room felt like a courtroom as we waited for Dad. Mom sat on the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap, the screenshots of Rachel's texts printed and stacked neatly on the coffee table. Claire paced, her heels clicking against the hardwood, while Ethan slouched in an armchair, his eyes fixed on the floor. I stood by the window, my heart pounding as the sound of Dad's car pulling into the driveway broke the silence. He walked in, his briefcase in hand, his face a mask of calm until he saw us. "What's this?" he asked, his voice wary. "Sit down, Tom," Mom said, her tone icy. "We need to talk." Dad's eyes flicked to the papers on the table, then to me. This is about Lily, isn't it? I told you, Susan, she. No, Mom cut him off. This is about you. She pushed the stack of papers toward him. He froze, his hand halfway to the top sheet, as if touching it would make it real. What is this? He asked, but his voice betrayed him, a slight tremor, a crack in his armor. Proof, Claire said, stepping forward. Proof that you've been lying to us. To Mom. For years. Dad's face hardened, but his eyes darted to the door, like he was calculating an escape. You're believing her? He said, pointing at me. After what she did. Don't. Ethan snapped, his voice low but fierce. Don't turn this on her. We know about Rachel. The name hit him like a punch. He sank into a chair, his bravado crumbling. You don't understand, he started, but Mom held up a hand. I understand enough, she said. You humiliated Lily in front of everyone. You called Emily, threatened her family. All to distract from your own lies. How could you? Dad's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in my life, I saw him speechless, stripped of the authority he'd always wielded. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. This was the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd cheered at my graduation. Now he was a stranger. I made a mistake, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel, it wasn't serious. It was a moment of weakness. A moment. Claire scoffed. Years, Dad. Years of lies. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. You don't get to call it a mistake. You broke our family. You broke me. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over us. I wanted to reach for her, to tell her I was sorry, but I couldn't move. This wasn't just about Dad's affair anymore. It was about every choice we'd made, every secret we'd kept, every wound we'd inflicted on each other. I'm sorry, Dad said, his voice cracking. Susan, I love you. I never meant to hurt you. Then why? She asked, her voice breaking. Why did you do this? He looked down, his hands clasped tightly. I felt trapped. Work, the house, the expectations I thought I could escape, just for a little while. Escape? Ethan's voice was bitter. You had us. You had Mom. And you chose to hurt her instead. Dad flinched, but he didn't argue. For the first time, I saw shame in his eyes, not the righteous anger he'd thrown at me, but real, raw regret. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it made him human again, flawed and broken like the rest of us. Mom stood, her face resolute. I need time, Tom. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I know I can't trust you right now. She walked out, leaving the rest of us staring at Dad. Claire followed her, then Ethan, their footsteps heavy with finality. I stayed, my eyes locked on Dad's. You were wrong about me, I said quietly. I made a mistake, but I'm still your daughter. And I'm not the one who broke this family. His head bowed, and for a moment, I thought he might cry. But he didn't. He just sat there, alone in the wreckage of his own making. The days after the confrontation were a blur of silence and strained glances. Mom moved into the guest room, her laughter replaced by a quiet resolve that scared me more than her tears. Dad stayed, but he was a ghost in his own house, his presence a reminder of the fault lines we'd all ignored for too long. I wanted to fix it, to glue our family back together, but some cracks are too deep for apologies. I met Emily again, this time at her house. Her kids were at school, and the living room was scattered with toys and crayons, a life I'd nearly destroyed. James moved out, she said, pouring tea with steady hands. I told him I couldn't do it anymore. Not after everything. I'm sorry, I said, the words feeling inadequate. I never meant for this to hurt you. She nodded, her eyes soft but guarded. I know, and I don't blame you, not entirely. James made his choices. So did your dad. So did I, when I ignored the signs. We sat in silence, the weight of our shared mistakes hanging between us. But there was something else, something stronger, understanding. We'd both been burned by the men we trusted, and we'd both survived. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. I told my parents, Emily said. They're devastated, but they're on my side. I'm going to be okay. The kids, they'll be okay too. I thought of Mom, of the way she'd looked at those texts, like her world had shattered. I hope my mom will be, I said. She's stronger than she thinks, but it's a lot. Emily reached across the table, her hand brushing mine. She has you. That's more than you know. Her words stayed with me as I drove home, the city blurring past. Mom had always been the glue, the one who held us together through Dad's temper and our rebellions. Now, it was my turn to be there for her. But first, I had to face my own guilt. That night, I found Mom in the backyard, staring at the stars. The air was cool, the scent of jasmine heavy around us. "I'm sorry," I said, sitting beside her. "For everything. For James, for not telling you, for all of it." She looked at me, her eyes tired but warm. "You're my daughter, Lily. You made a mistake, but you're not your mistake. I wish you'd told me, but I understand why you didn't." Tears stung my eyes. "I thought you'd hate me, like Dad does." She took my hand, her grip firm. "Your father doesn't hate you. He's angry, at you, at himself, at the world. But that's his burden, not yours. And I could never hate you." We sat there, the silence filled with the hum of crickets and the weight of our love. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged, not because I'd earned it, but because Mom saw me, flaws and all, and chose to love me anyway. The next day, I called Claire and Ethan. We needed a plan, not just for Mom, but for all of us. Claire suggested therapy, a neutral space to untangle our pain. Ethan, still grappling with his anger, agreed reluctantly. We weren't whole, not yet, but we were trying. And that was enough for now. As for Dad, he started sleeping at a hotel, giving Mom space. I didn't know if they'd reconcile, if Mom could ever trust him again. But I knew one thing. We weren't the family we'd been before that birthday dinner. We were something new, something raw and real, built on truth instead of secrets. 6 months later, the dining room table was set again, but this time, it was different. No birthday banners, no forced smiles, just us, trying to rebuild. Mom had started therapy, her laughter slowly returning, though it carried a new edge, a strength forged in pain. Dad was there too, at her invitation, but he sat at the far end, his presence tentative, like a guest in his own home. Claire and Mark brought dessert, a chocolate cake Mom loved, and Ethan actually put his phone down for once, his eyes softer than they'd been in months. I set out the plates, my hands steady despite the memories that lingered in this room. We weren't healed, but we were healing. "Lily," Dad said as we cleared the table, his voice low. "Can we talk?" I nodded, bracing myself. We stepped onto the porch, the night air cool against my skin. He looked older, his gray hair thinner, his shoulders slumped. "I was wrong," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "What I said at the dinner, it wasn't about you. Not really. I was angry at myself, at my own failures. I took it out on you." I waited, letting his words settle. Part of me wanted to lash out, to make him feel the pain he'd caused. But another part, the part that remembered his laughter, his pride at my small victories, just wanted peace. "I made mistakes too," I said. "But you hurt me, Dad. You hurt all of us." "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm trying to make it right. With your mom, with you. I don't know if I can, but I want to try." I nodded, not ready to forgive, but willing to listen. "It's going to take time," I said. "But I'm here." Inside, Mom was laughing at something Ethan said, her head thrown back, her eyes bright. Claire caught my eye and smiled, a real smile, not the strained one she'd worn for years. We were a family, broken and remade, learning to love each other through the cracks. Emily and I stayed in touch, our bond forged in shared pain. She was rebuilding her life, her kids thriving despite the upheaval. We didn't talk about James or Dad much anymore. We talked about hope, about the future, about the strength we'd found in ourselves. As I looked around the table, I realized something. Dad's words that night, meant to cast me out, had done the opposite. They'd forced us to face our truths, to confront the lies we'd all told ourselves. I wasn't a guest in this family. I was part of it, flaws and all, and no one could take that away. The meal ended with coffee and quiet conversation, the kind that doesn't need to fill the silence. We were still fragile, still learning, but we were together. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.